Before Kenya's independence in 1963, the British colonial government implemented various wildlife conservation efforts. These included the establishment of national parks and reserves to protect endangered species and their habitats. Post-independence, Kenya faced significant challenges such as increased human-wildlife conflicts, poaching, and land use changes. These complications were compounded by instances of incompetence, inadequate management practices, and rampant corruption. The rapid move to decolonize governmental agencies and to Africanize departments led to forced departure of skilled and knowledgeable colonial administrators. Lingering resentments among Africanists led them to refuse consultation with former colonial administrators on policy implementation. Some colonialist supporters predicted a dire future for African wildlife, claiming that transferring the management of national parks and conservation efforts to African tribes would lead to disastrous consequences. Cambridge University Press, 2017. Africa Safari guide Sid Downey invoked the losing battle to save wildlife from, quote, the meat-hungry Africans who regarded all animals as their natural enemies anyway, end quote. Cambridge University Press, 2017. Australia war correspondent Alan Moorhead, quote, absolute chaos, commercial poaching and organized hunting will quickly wipe out all game outside stipulated sanctuaries. Continuing, quote, the game within the reserves will be destroyed in a mad rush for political loot and a carve-up of all Kenya's lands, end quote. From chaos to conservation, Leakey's fight to save Kenya's wildlife. Richard Leakey was talented in a multitude of fields. He left an indelible mark on both science and society. His groundbreaking work in paleoanthropology reshaped our understanding of human evolution. He discovered both K&M ER 1470, attributed to Homo rudolfensis, and the nearly complete skeleton of Turkana boy, a Homo ergaster. Beyond his scientific achievements, he was a formidable politician in Kenya, having been elected to Parliament and serving as a key advisor on environmental issues to Kenyan presidents. Often overlooked was his passionate advocacy for wildlife conservation, where he played a crucial role in combating poaching and preserving Kenya's natural heritage. But, as we shall soon see, his wildlife conservation efforts were mired in controversy, scandal, political intrigue, and even violence. Leakey's early life. Leakey was born in Nairobi, Kenya in 1944. He was the second son of three of Louis and Mary Leakey. Jonathan would discover the jawbone in 1960, the first specimen of Homo habilis. Philip would go on to have a lengthy career in Kenyan politics. Richard Leakey never shared his parents' enthusiasm for fossil hunting. As a teenager, he deliberately avoided joining them at excavation sites like Old Divide Gorge. Instead of following in his parents' footsteps, Richard Leakey, like many adventurous young men of the colonial era, chose to become a safari guide. In 1968, Louis Leakey was a guest at a banquet in Nairobi, where he had the opportunity to meet King Haile Selassie of Ethiopia. The king was intrigued by Leakey's fossil discoveries and extended an invitation for similar fossil hunting expeditions to be conducted in Ethiopia. Louis Leakey enticed his son into the paleoanthropology field by hiring him as the safari guide for the Ethiopian expedition. There are three teams: the French, the Americans, and the Kenyans. Richard Leakey would head the Kenyan team. They divided up the fossil-rich Omo River region in the isolated outback of Ethiopia. The Kenyans were awarded the least accessible spot north of the river. As Leakey later recounted, the crocodiles in the Omo were enormous, some 20 feet in length. Despite the hardships, it was the Kenyan team that made the first major find. The Leakey-led team found two fossil skulls of early Homo sapiens, initially believed to be 160,000 years old. One of these, Omo 1, was later redated to 230,000 years ago, making it the oldest putative fossil of Homo sapiens ever found. He also discovered a near perfectly preserved skull of Paranthropus boisei. Richard Leakey and his wife Meave had been out for a morning stroll at Lake Turkana when Richard nearly stepped on a skull fragment of the Paranthropus. In 1972, Leakey's team discovered what they initially believed to be a Homo habilis cranium at Lake Turkana, but it was later determined to be a new species, Homo rudolfensis. Perhaps the Leakey team's most famous find was the 40% complete skeleton of Turkana boy, Homo ergaster, in 1994. Leakey's paleoanthropological career was marked by fierce battles over species designations, fossil recovery methods, and finances. This included a decades-long intense rivalry with Donald Johanson, the discovery of Lucy, Australopithecus afarensis. But Leakey's academic battles were merely a prelude to the fierce and dangerous confrontations he would face in his fight against poachers and corruption in Kenya. Britannica. From 1968 to 1989, Leakey was the director of the National Museums of Kenya. In 1989, he was made director of the Wildlife Conservation and Management Department. Continuing, Leakey embarked on a campaign to reduce corruption within the KWS, crack down, often using force, on ivory poachers and restore the security of Kenya's national parks. Continuing, in doing so, he made numerous enemies. African nationalism. Kenya had been under the rule of President Daniel Moi. He was the successor to the stridently anti-white, pro-African nationalist Jomo Kenyatta. Moi faced continuous pressure from Kenyatta's fervent African nationalist followers, who were eager for revenge against the whites. Moi continued Kenyatta's policies, including land redistribution and the confiscation of farms owned by colonial landowners. He was also accused of using dictatorial powers, consolidating power by rewarding loyalists, and engaging in massive corruption. In an effort to improve Kenya's international image and reduce pressure from worldwide conservation groups, President Moi appointed Richard Leakey to head the Kenya Wildlife Service in 1989. From the BBC, 2014, critics said the appointment of a white man with no university education was an insult to Kenyans and one which had clearly been orchestrated by colonial mentalities. Leakey even hired security guards for the Wildlife Service. Critics accused him of having his own private militia. As a warning to the international poaching conglomerates, Leakey lit afire a large pile of tusks that had been confiscated from the poachers. He had invited all the press. It was covered worldwide. President Moi's relationship with Leakey became strained over time. As Leakey's strong anti-poaching measures began to affect powerful interests, Moi's support waned. Leakey family's troubled legacy. In addition to Richard Leakey's conflicts with President Moi, he faced challenges from critics of the Leakey family. His mother, Mary Leakey, was often described as having a traditional British outlook, which included a sense of British nationalism and colonialist attitudes. Lewis had been accused of racism for dressing in traditional Kikuyu clothing and writing on the quote-unquote great differences in, quote, mental and psychological differences between Europeans and the Negro, end quote. Quite ironically, Lewis Leakey was born into the Kikuyu tribe and was an honored and celebrated lifetime member. Additionally, Richard Leakey, as director of the Kenyan Museum during this period, faced extreme demands for the return of precious artifacts from Britain taken during the colonial period. Leakey loses his legs. Smithsonian. While piloting his plane on a government mission in 1993, Richard Leakey went down in the mountains outside Nairobi. Both his legs were subsequently amputated below the knees. Continuing, his success at stemming elephant poaching, he believes, may have led someone to sabotage his plane. Leakey, quoted at Newsweek, quote, "When I was head of the Kenya Wildlife Service, I had 5 bodyguards, night and day, 24/7, end quote," he says, quote, "and I needed them. There were many, shall we say, interesting incidents," end quote. BBC. On one occasion, he, Richard Leakey, was whipped by hired thugs. According to Newsweek, Leakey to Save the Elephants 2014, the vast majority of the illegal elephant tusk trade was run by al-Shabaab terrorists and Somali criminal gangs. The traffickers received financial backing from Asian mobsters from the Far East. Manga Bay, Victory Rule of Law, 2018. Faisal Muhammad Ali is identified as the kingpin of an ivory trafficking cartel based in Mombasa. Continuing, in 2014, 2,152 kilograms, 4,744 pounds of ivory were seized by police at a local warehouse. An arrest warrant for Faisal was issued, and 2 days later he was arrested with Interpol assistance in Tanzania. Seemingly under pressure from powerful poachers, President Moi began to criticize Leakey, describing him as a racist, an atheist, and a foreigner, according to the BBC. Leakey was relieved of his positions in government soon thereafter, but that was not the end of his political career. In 1997, Leakey was one of 3 members of the Safina Party elected to the Kenyan Parliament. The party included both black and white Kenyans. Running on a platform of give all Kenyans a chance, the Safina Party championed the fight against corruption, the protection of human rights, and the promotion of wildlife conservation. The Leakey legacy for wildlife protection. Richard Leakey died on January 2nd, 2022. Quote, Richard Leakey's unwavering dedication to wildlife conservation has left an indelible mark on our world. His tireless efforts to protect endangered species and combat poaching have inspired countless individuals to join the fight for our planet's future. End quote. Jane Goodall. As we shall see in future videos in the series, the problem of poaching by African tribes continues to this day. It has become particularly bad in areas surrounding the national parks. Fortunately, a social media campaign launched by Leakey and followed through by his successor, Dr. Paula Kahumbu, is bringing increased awareness to the plight of Kenyan wildlife. Many young Africans today are taking to social media to make YouTube videos, TikToks, to tweet, and to post on Facebook. My elephants, my heritage. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.